Afiya, a young Maldivian resort worker with dreams bigger than the island she called home, and a powerful Dubai sheik seeking escape from his gilded life, crossed paths in paradise. But their forbidden romance soon spiraled into betrayal, jealousy, and a tragedy that would stain the turquoise waters forever. The Maldives is often described as a paradise on earth, a place where crystal-clear water meets endless white sand and luxury villas float above the ocean. Guests arrive with expectations of perfect sunsets, privacy, and indulgence. But behind this picture of calm lies the hidden stories of those who work long hours to make it possible. Among them was a young woman named Afiya, a resort worker whose job was to keep the villa spotless. She lived a simple life, waking before dawn to prepare for her shift, her days filled with cleaning, serving, and smiling politely at wealthy guests who rarely remembered her name. Everything changed when she was assigned to clean one of the most exclusive villas. It belonged to a Dubai sheik, a man known for his wealth and influence. Unlike other guests, he noticed her. At first, it was only fleeting eye contact, small moments that passed without words. But the intensity in his gaze stayed with her, stirring something she could not ignore. She tried to remind herself of her position, of the risks, but her heart betrayed her. For the sheik, the attraction was unexpected. He had come to the Maldives seeking peace away from the rigid expectations of his home. Afiya's quiet grace and honesty felt refreshing compared to the artificial world he was used to. Their first real encounter was almost accidental, a conversation sparked by her forgetting a towel in his villa. That brief exchange opened a door neither of them intended to walk through. From that moment on, the paradise around them was no longer just about beaches and sunsets. It was about stolen glances, unspoken feelings, and the dangerous possibility of something more. The connection between Afiya and the sheik grew quickly, but it was a secret built on fragile ground. Every time she passed by his villa, her pulse quickened, and every chance meeting felt like a spark too dangerous to touch. Yet they kept coming closer. Afiya knew the resort's rules were clear. Any personal involvement with guests was forbidden. Staff had been dismissed for far less, and she depended on her job to support her family. Losing it would mean losing everything. Still, the pull toward him was stronger than her fear. The sheik, however, carried an even heavier burden. He was already married to a powerful woman back in Dubai, a wife who was deeply respected in his community. Their union was more than love. It was a statement of wealth, tradition, and pride. For him to be seen with someone like Afiya, a worker from an ordinary background, would not only be considered scandalous but dishonorable. He told himself it was just a passing distraction, something harmless to ease his loneliness in paradise. Yet the secrecy made it more intoxicating. They began meeting in hidden places on the island, quiet stretches of beach at night, dimly lit service paths where no one wandered. The thrill of being unseen gave their encounters a dangerous edge. Afiya felt torn between the innocence of her heart and the weight of the lies she was now part of. Every time she returned to her staff quarters, she feared someone had noticed. But she couldn't stop herself. What had begun as harmless curiosity was now a forbidden romance, one that neither could control. Beneath the beauty of the Maldives, a storm was already brewing, waiting for the moment to break. Secrets rarely stay hidden for long, especially in a place where everyone watches quietly from the shadows. The resort was designed to offer guests absolute privacy, but for the staff, nothing went unnoticed. Afiya thought she was careful, slipping away in the dark and returning before dawn, her footsteps muffled by sand and silence. Yet one of her colleagues began to suspect. A night porter, responsible for moving supplies between villas, had seen her disappear into the sheik's suite more than once. At first, he brushed it off, but whispers have a way of growing legs. Soon, small rumors drifted among the staff quarters, vague enough to be denied, but sharp enough to cause unease. What Afiya didn't know was that the sheik's own entourage was far less forgiving. His personal bodyguard had been trained to notice everything, and he could not ignore the secret meetings. His loyalty lay not with his employer's fleeting desires, but with the family that paid him. Quietly, he began making phone calls back to Dubai, his words carrying across borders like poison. The Sheikh's brothers were informed, and eventually, so was his wife. Back on the island, Afiya felt the weight of invisible eyes following her. When she walked through the staff canteen, conversations would pause. When she returned laundry to the villa, the bodyguard's stare lingered too long. She told herself she was imagining things, but deep inside, she sensed the danger. What had started as something thrilling was now turning into a risk neither she nor the sheik had fully considered. The paradise that once sheltered their romance had shifted. Now, every hidden glance, every stolen moment, was another step closer to exposure and ruin. When the news of the sheik's secret reached his wife in Dubai, it cut deeper than betrayal. In her world, pride was everything. To be shamed by a resort worker, someone she considered beneath her, was unthinkable. At first, she demanded answers from the family, but their silence only fueled her anger. Within days, she booked her own stay at the Maldives resort, disguising her purpose as a simple vacation. To everyone else, she was another wealthy guest seeking relaxation. To her, it was a mission of control and retribution. When she arrived, the atmosphere around her shifted immediately. Staff whispered about her striking presence, her jewelry glittering even under the soft island sun. Afiya had no idea who she was. To her, the new guest was simply another demanding visitor, someone to serve with the same careful smile she gave everyone. But as the wife watched from behind designer sunglasses, every movement of Afiya's hands, every brief moment spent near her husband, felt like a dagger to the heart. She did not confront her husband directly. Instead, she observed, letting her rage simmer. She spoke politely to staff, tipping generously, never letting her mask slip. Yet under that polished exterior was a storm. Each night, she met privately with the bodyguards, asking questions, confirming details, tightening her grip on the situation. Her patience was not forgiveness. It was calculation. Afiya remained unaware of the danger. She still clung to the fantasy that her secret love was hidden, protected by silence. What she did not realize was that her every step was now under scrutiny. The wife's presence on the island marked the end of illusions. Paradise had turned into a stage, and the silent audience was preparing for the final act. The evening was heavy with the smell of rain, the sky painted in dark gray clouds that threatened to collapse over the island. Afiya had been asked to meet the sheik at a secluded part of the beach, far from the eyes of other guests and staff. She thought it was another stolen moment, another chance to escape reality and live inside the fragile bubble they had built together. She waited near the palm trees, her heart pounding, her clothes clinging slightly to her skin in the rising humidity. The waves crashed louder than usual, echoing her nervous anticipation. But it wasn't the sheik who appeared from the shadows. It was his wife, dressed elegantly even in the storm's gloom, her presence colder than the rain that had just begun to fall. The sight froze Afiya where she stood. There were no smiles, no politeness, only a silent stare that spoke of betrayal, humiliation, and fury. The silence stretched long enough for fear to take root, and then, from behind the trees, men emerged. They were not resort staff, nor tourists. These were the wife's hired men, summoned to carry out what words could not. Afiya realized too late that the meeting had been a trap. The rain came down harder, soaking the sand and masking her muffled cries. The wife did not need to speak. Her mere presence was command enough. The paradise setting dissolved into chaos as the men closed in. For the young worker, there was no escape from the circle tightening around her. What had begun as a dangerous romance now turned into a fight for survival, one she could never win. By the time the storm unleashed its fury on the island, her fate was already sealed. The next morning, the island awoke to uneasy calm after the violent storm. Tourists emerged from their villas to find the beach littered with debris washed ashore by the night's waves. A group of early swimmers noticed something unusual floating in the shallow lagoon, just beyond the curve of the boardwalk. At first, they thought it was driftwood tangled with seaweed. But as the tide shifted, the outline became clearer. A body lay face down, hair spread out like dark seagrass, the figure swaying with the current. Shock rippled through the resort. Guests screamed, staff rushed to the scene, and within minutes the area was sealed off. The victim was identified as Afiya. For those who worked alongside her every day, the discovery was crushing. Only the night before, she had been alive, laughing softly during her shift, carrying out her duties as usual. Now she was lifeless, pulled from the water that had once been her home. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some whispered she had drowned, caught by the storm while wandering the beach. Others suspected something darker, pointing to her frequent visits to the Sheikh's villa. The body bore no obvious wounds, but the timing and location raised suspicion. Authorities were called to investigate, though their presence created tension. The resort management feared scandal, desperate to protect its image as a place of luxury and safety. Tourists were quietly encouraged to continue their vacations, even as police cordoned off parts of the lagoon. For Afiya's fellow workers, there was no distraction strong enough to erase the horror. The paradise they had worked so hard to maintain now stood tainted, its calm surface hiding the truth of what had really happened beneath the storm's cover. The investigation into Afiya's death began quickly, but moved in unsettling directions. Local police arrived at the resort with determination, yet from the very beginning there were obstacles. The Sheikh insisted he had nothing to do with her, portraying himself as a victim of rumors spread by jealous staff. His bodyguards stood firm, their faces expressionless, offering no details about where he had been during the storm. Witnesses among the workers who had quietly noticed Afiya's late-night visits remained silent, fearing both job loss and retaliation. The weight of the Sheikh's influence hung heavy over every step of the inquiry. Behind closed doors, the resort management applied pressure to keep things quiet. Their priority was protecting the resort's reputation. Guests paying thousands of dollars a night could not be disturbed by the scandal of a possible murder on the property. Managers urged investigators to label the death an accident, pointing to the storm as an easy explanation. Drowning during a night walk sounded believable, they argued, and far less damaging to tourism than whispers of a forbidden affair turned deadly. Whispers, however, could not be silenced. Among the staff, suspicions grew stronger. Many believed the Sheikh's wife had played a role, though no evidence pointed directly to her. Others claimed they had seen men shadowing Afiya in the days before her death. Yet when officials wrote their reports, these details vanished. Money changed hands, meetings were held in private rooms, and the story took shape the way power wanted it to. In the end, the official conclusion stated that Afiya had drowned accidentally during the storm. For those who had known her, the explanation fell hollow. Truth had been buried, and in its place remained only silence and fear. When the case was officially closed, life at the resort slowly returned to its polished routine. Guests arrived with smiles, greeted by the same turquoise waters and warm hospitality, unaware of the tragedy that had unfolded only weeks earlier. For management, the incident was treated as a chapter best forgotten, buried beneath marketing campaigns and staged photographs of paradise. Yet for the staff, the memory of Afiya lingered in every corridor and on every beach path she once walked. Her absence was a silent reminder of how quickly innocence could be swallowed by forces beyond control. In the local villages, her story became whispered legend. Some spoke of her as a girl who had dared to dream beyond her station, punished for reaching too high. Others mourned her as a victim of power, a life crushed under the weight of secrets belonging to the rich and untouchable. At night, staff claimed they sometimes heard faint footsteps near the lagoon where her body was found, or saw fleeting shadows along the boardwalk. Whether superstition or guilt, the island carried a new darkness beneath its surface beauty. Meanwhile, the Sheikh and his family returned to Dubai, their lives untouched in the public eye. His wife resumed her social appearances, her face never betraying the storm that had consumed her. The official narrative remained clean, a tragic accident, nothing more. Yet behind the closed doors of those who knew the truth, silence was maintained through fear and money. The Maldives, once a place where Afiya saw hope for a brighter future, became the stage of her final downfall. Paradise itself had been scarred, reminding all who knew the story that beneath beauty, shadows can grow, and even the calmest waters can conceal tragedy.